Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Zimmerman, digital content editor for Jazziz magazine, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to another Jazziz Daily Brunch. Thanks for joining us for brunch. I've got my coffee going already. I had a snack, but I already ate it. I was too impatient. I guess I was just excited for today's guest. You know him from his work with Elvin Jones, Miles Davis, from his own group Expansions. He's an NEA Jazz Master. Please welcome to brunch, Dave Liebman.
Thank you.
Dave, what's going on, man? We got a real special treat, folks. Dave is going to start out with a tune for us. Take it away, Dave. Yeah, man. Always a treat to hear you, Dave.
Thank you, sir.
And welcome to brunch. It's nice to have you.
I had my coffee ready, but I can hear it circulating, getting a little energy going.
Good, beautiful. You know, I always like to start these things off just by checking in and asking, how you're doing during these times, how you're keeping sane, how you're keeping healthy. What have you been doing? Hold up. How are things with you, man?
Well, I haven't been out in 2 weeks. That's true.
Yeah.
And we're in an apartment house on 77th on the east side. This is, I'm a New Yorker. We just moved back to New York. We had lived in the Pocono Mountains, in Pennsylvania for about 30 plus years. Known with Phil Woods and the Delaware Water Gap and Deer Head Inn and so forth. And we decided that we'd like to get back to the city, so we couldn't have picked better timing. but you somehow the days passed through. I didn't feel too inspired in the beginning, and now it's done. I just look at it as part of my job. It has to be, you have to do it. Just keep yourself, keep the reed wet, and hope for the best, because everything's been canceled right up at least now through September for the most part. And then, depending on how things go.
Well, we're certainly glad you're doing that, and thanks again for joining us. You can tell by your accent, Dave, you certainly ain't from Kansas. You are a dyed-in-the-wool New Yorker. So I brought my bodega coffee mug for you today.
Go ahead, man. Enjoy. Bon appetit.
That's right. And I wanted to start there because, you fit in an interesting place on the timeline of jazz saxophonists growing up in New York, because you really got to be a student, an acolyte of the saxophone as John Coltrane was in his prime.
You got it.
And so on that timeline, there are the contemporaries of John Coltrane who were established when he came about and watched him change the jazz landscape. And, his career was cut short. So there's a huge swath of players afterwards who were influenced by his sound after he died. You were a student. You were really developing as a player when John Coltrane was in his prime. And I know seeing him in person was a major influence on your career trajectory.
Absolutely.
I was wondering if you could take me back to that moment. You're how old? I don't know how old you're, where you saw John Coltrane live and what that was like for you, man.
Well, Christmas week of 1961, I had gone with a couple of guys from the high school, I was in high school in Brooklyn. And with the big band, they invited me to come to Birdland. I never heard of Birdland. I didn't know anything. I was 15 years old. My parents said, okay. So we went to Birdland. And one little story, at Birdland, they had a peanut gallery, the last row. And underage, because, you had to be 21 or 18.
Right.
You get the first seats, whatever was available, about maybe 8-10 seats. And, you took us there. And you were there for, 6 hours maybe.
Right.
So that was the first time. That was Count Basie, who I didn't have no awareness of, a big band. And Jerry Mulligan, Bob Brookmeyer, 10 Ted, it was called, I think.
Wow.
And of course, to see a big band, 100 feet, pretty close was a pretty big deal. I mean, we were purportedly the dance band of the school. Didn't even call it jazz band, but to see this band in front of your eyes and you can almost touch the saxophones was very impressive. So I'm a big shot. I know New York. I take my girlfriend the next February of '62, and we get there, and I have no idea who's playing. It says Bill Evans Trio and John Coltrane Quintet.
Oh my God!
No, I have no idea. So we go in, we pay our $5 admission fee to Pee Wee Marquette, that voice, that a voice like that.
Yeah, man.
And we go to the Peanut Gallery, and we sit down, and Bill's playing. It's a Saturday night. You can hardly hear him. All I know is his head down because he liked to play, And it was, I had other things to do, so that was not impressive. I didn't know anything about it. And then these guys come on, and they start playing, and it was the quartet: Jimmy Garrison, McCoy, Elvin, and in this case, because he was with the band about 6 to 9 months, Eric Dolphy, which was a treat.
Wow, man.
So all I know is, I said, I always tell the story. It sounds so naive. I said, "Is that the same instrument I have in Brooklyn?"
Right. Can't be.
It was a play called "The Tree Grows in Brooklyn." Well, this is the one tree that was the most important tree to me. And they played, and it was incredible. I just had never felt seen, cognized, whatever word you want to describe us. That was the sentence, and that was the beginning of my life in a way. I mean,
right.
I played piano and I played saxophone. I did Farrell Lee's and spinning songs. Saxophone I learned, from the books and so forth. But he goes into, he starts playing the tune, and the lady, Julie, she says, "Oh, that's from The Sound of Music." I said, "Wait a minute now. This is Julie Andrews prancing around the Tyrolean mountains."
Right.
These guys don't do that. And sure enough, of course, it was my favorite things.
Right.
The Train's signature tune, and in the 15 or 20 times I saw Train, every night they played my favorite things. That was his hit tune. Of course, he changed it unbelievably from his debut in 1960 to the last recording live at the Vanguard in 66. But I always say this, and it sounds dramatic, and what it is, but really, if I had not been there that night and been struck by it, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Incredible, man. Incredible.
The power of the music and the commitment and what seemed to be no bullshit. I mean, it was just really. They didn't talk. They didn't look at each other. They just got out and played, did 2 sets, and that was it. I was converted for the rest of my life.
Set you on your path.
Yeah.
Man, that's incredible to walk in not knowing and have Bill Evans and John Coltrane on the docket. Amazing, man. And what's interesting about you and your career path from that point was one of your earliest gigs was with 10 Wheel Drive, right? It was kind of the
fusion period.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of, left-leaning rock stuff. And that was an early gig for you. And I'm wondering if, kind of getting your bearings in that group affected your approach stylistically, or your taste musically or anything like that? Open your brain up to new sounds?
I was a rock and roll fan in the 60s.
Okay.
I was Elvis Presley nut. I loved Elvis, the Del Vikings, the Five Satins, Motown, whatever.
Yeah.
So 10 Wheel Drive was from that era, like Tower of Power, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, a couple others I'm missing. And it was a product of its time, of its period. For me, it was a brass. It was two trombones and 2 trumpets, I forget, and me, one reed. And the main thing I got out of 10 Wheel Drive was that the arranger and composer, Mike Zager was his name, he said, you got to have a couple of different instruments here. Well, likewise, flute, clarinet, and soprano saxophone. So I immediately went out and bought a saxophone. I had a clarinet and I had the other thing, but I didn't have a saxophone. So that became the beginning of my playing soprano, which is now 1969. Okay. And I'm still, I'm just negotiating the end of school and college, and but I went to NYU and living in New York and so forth. So that was probably the biggest thing. The other thing was that this band was a really good band, and the material was high class. I mean, the words were good. The lady who was a singer, very Janis Joplin oriented, Kenya Ravan was her name.
Right.
And this was the gig that got me out of 9 to 5. In other words, when I got out of school, I realized I had to make a living. My parents said, we took care of you. In those days, it was a lot easier than now, financially. And, I just said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'll get the credits in teaching and I'll go in and be a substitute teacher. Now, my parents were teachers. My brother was teachers in the New York City system. So I knew the deal. And I had it down to 2 days a week as a sub, and then come home, take my tie off, and play for the next 5 days in the loft, in this loft that I had in my
right.
And, so that was the beginning of my making a living, steady living, because they put you on salary. We made $150 a week.
Wow.
And you were available every day. We either rehearsed on 27th Broadway, or we did gigs. And, this band went as far as Florida, University of Florida in Gainesville. I remember we went that far, and then local gigs. And it was a working band. So professional unit, the manager, the whole driver, an equipment guy, the whole rock and roll.
Yeah, man.
And so that was, and then that is the gig that, I went from there to Elvin, and that, that's another story, but this was like it really enabled me to be a musician 24 hours a day.
When you realize I could do this professionally. Yeah.
I had an inkling that I could.
Right.
Well, in those days you didn't think like that.
Right.
Because we didn't go to school for it. So we didn't sit around.
Same here. And with parents like ours, man, we did
it by street and by trial and error, miss. And, it was less prescribed. So you didn't think about, well, could I ever play with Miles Davis? You just dreamed of ascending the ladder of jazz and getting known and hopefully being able to play. You wanted to play. Yeah. So that was the beginning of that.
And track. We will certainly connect those dots to Miles Davis, because you mentioned a word that has kind of become synonymous with you, which is the loft and the loft scene. Yes. So I know you and the founding of your collective, Free Life Communication, right?
You're on the case, brother.
Yeah, Free Life Communication. So what was Free Life Communication? Why did you decide to found it? And how did it help bring this scene together?
This is 69, 70.
Right.
And we were playing in the loft for each other. And we were playing mostly free jazz. We were playing, our mantra was ascension.
Okay.
10 guys at once. Somebody plays the drums, somebody plays a stick on the floor. Like free jazz at its height. And when it was, in New York, it was part of the scene that you had to deal with it. And we, being 20, 21, 22 years old, me, Brecka, Lenny White, Bob Moses, Randy Brecka, Bob Berg, we were dealing with like learning changes and stuff like that. But because we never went to school, it was again sort of hit and miss with playing the jazz repertoire. But free jazz we could do. So I said at one point, we're playing for each other. This is like I don't want to put fill in the rest of the word. And it was time for us to go out and play for people. So we began by playing at churches and museums. And, we did 300 concerts the first year. And then we got a grant and we got into a building called the Space for Innovative Development, which was a converted church that housed a video company, very famously the Nikolai Ballet Company, us with Free Life Communication, and maybe some other art form. And it was, it was meant to be your home, and you could do concerts. And it was the beginning of videotaping and so forth. So that first year, we had beautiful 2,000 square foot, perfect, clean, beautiful floor. We bought 60 pillows. I went out and bought pillows for people to watch the music on. Cool. And we did 300 concerts in that first 69, 70. And again, mostly free jazz, but, sometimes a trio, sometimes double trios. It just seemed to me that we had to get out of the loft and into the real world. And that was the impetus for forming the group. Funny, nice story is, so we're in my loft, and I called a meeting, and about 10, 15 guys showed up, and we had two guests. The first guest was Leroy Jenkins, violinist, avant-garde violinist. Yeah. And he was not too positive, actually. He didn't help out much. But then Anthony Braxton came up. We invited Anthony, and he was, peace and love and that whole deal. Yeah, man. So we got sanctioned, and we said, so now it's about 11 o'clock at night. I said, okay, guys, we're going to do something. We're going to do 501c, which then still in those days was the code for self promotion company. And we're going to play, and we're going to be part of this Free Life Communication. We're going to be part of the loft and of this church, renovated church. And it was a time for us to really get to know each other and play. And then the name, this is a nice story. Bob Berg says, we want the word free because it was free jazz. We wanted life because it's about life, and communication because that's what we're trying to do. And that was Bob Berg founded the name.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you mentioned, there were so many spokes in that wheel, major names, like you say, Michael Brecker, and his brother.
Michael took my loft after me.
Oh, did he?
That was my first loft of 5 in the next 10 years. And I sold it. In those days, you sold it. It was a little complicated, but you sold the rights to be there. And Michael took it, and he stayed there for 10 years.
Wow.
with
Now
my piano on the drum set.
meeting Michael, I mean, did you know that there was just something special about this cat, the way
Well,
he
he was
played?
serious, but Randy was my like a brother. We had a lot in common. We were the same age, and his trumpet and everything. I mean, Randy was like, and still is like part of the family. Michael was Randy's brother.
Okay, the young kid hanging around with everybody.
And of course, when he started getting serious, when I would go and visit him in the next those 10 years, because I had moved to another loft and so forth, I would see all the music paper on the floor, a couple of things that I gave him. He was in a period of deep practice, which is why he got so far on the horn.
Right.
He put his time in.
Right. And we'll talk about, because you reconnected with him later, and Joe Lovano and Saxophone Summit. We'll talk about Elvin Jones, because was that relationship forged during this time?
The relationship with
Elvin.
Well, Elvin had, those days the jazz scene was not so many people. And if you hung out and you were somewhere, you probably were there 3 or 4 nights. Guys used to see you and some could be friendly, some could be cold, a little offhand, cold to you. Some could be testing you, because jazz guys like to test, do you really need it? Come back tomorrow. Go get me a drink.
Right.
And what is it you want to know, young man? And now you become friends. That's how I became with Charles Lloyd. We became sociable. So it became social more than even the playing, the music. Right. I learned from Charles was what a jazz musician is about. He was successful.
Those off the bandstand lessons.
Yeah. We watched the football game, smoke a joint, and who knows,
Yeah, man.
It was, Charles was great because he was kind of a hippie in his heart. And this time period is definitely the hippie period, late 60s, early 70s. I mean, we were jazz people, but we were not immune to the effect of the counterculture. Right. I mean, the whole Woodstock thing and everything. I remember when Woodstock was on, it was in August, I think, and we were playing in the loft, sweating, dripping. Somebody said, "Hey, man, there's a big festival up at the Catskills." I said, "Oh, yeah, well, they ain't here, so the hell with it." Ended up being...
Yeah. Well, and occasionally they would overlap. I mean, you look at something like Forest Flower, which...
overlap, and, of course, people like Miles playing at the Fillmore. I mean, my first gig with Miles is the Fillmore.
Oh, okay. Well, let's put a pin in that, because that'll be soon. But Dave, I'd love to, before we get into the next chapter, you feel like doing any more playing?
I'll see what we can figure out. Yeah, sounds good here. Okay.
We left off kind of at a cliffhanger, the height of the loft scene. You have hooked up with Elvin at this point.
Yes.
And you're playing with him. I'm curious, first of all, because drummers always, for horn players especially, they tend to become engines for a player. Oh, yeah. They provide the energy. What was it like to play with Elvin? Not to mention this dude, you'd been following since you've been watching Coltrane, so things have become full circle. What was it like for you personally, and then musically, professionally? How did he really enhance your playing?
Well, let's start with the professionally, because to be with Elvin, you look, Elvin, and then in my case, Miles, I mean, you was stepping in the shoes of obviously Coltrane. Yeah, which was good and also not so good. Right. obvious musical reasons, because I couldn't do what he did, but it put you on the map, and in a very honest, spotlighted way. Me with Steve Grossman, Gene Perla with that quartet, which made that famously the Lighthouse, Live at the Lighthouse record. It was a dream come true to be on the bandstand with the guy that I had been watching now for, since this 1961 incident that I'm talking about. Yeah. And this is now 10, 12 years later. And the thing about Elvin was, that generation didn't talk much about music. They said they called the set, they played the set pretty much the same every night. There were very few changes. Once a tune worked, people liked it, or they seemed to. The band liked it, or it seemed to. That became part of the repertoire, and you would play that every night. And this band worked. This band was the last of in that era, one of the last of doing 6 nights a week, going to the club and going to the next city doing the same job.
Right.
So we had the workshop ability, and because we were doing it so much. Elvin was the ocean, the sky, and the earth. I mean, he was a force of nature. His cymbal beat was to die for.
Yeah.
What I had to learn with Elvin is very subtle, and I don't want to get too technical, but we have a beat and we have the placement of the beat, not necessarily where the beat should be, but sometimes before and sometimes after.
Right.
And Elvin was definitely after.
Okay.
way after.
Lower in the pocket.
Another groove even after. I mean, you think Dexter Gordon, Hank Mobley on the horn. This is the drums playing behind the beat. Yeah. So for 6 months I rushed, meaning I was ahead. Nobody knew it except me, and I know he knew it.
Right.
And then finally one night everything clicked, and I realized what it was, that I was pushing too hard, obviously, and had to relax even more than I was trying to relax, and double relax.
Yeah.
And listen to his ride beat, which of course I knew, but to do it is another thing. That's the thing about this thing. You listen to music in your home, you listen to music in concert, or used to be, and that you play on the bandstand, you jam and everything, but where the most knowledge is passed is the bandstand.
Right.
It's understood. No one's talking about it. You might say, hey, it was a nice night, or that second tune, we need another chord here. That. Right. But basically, your knowledge comes from standing next to somebody who's more advanced than you.
Yeah.
And I was with, but our favorite drummer of all time. And, but he was very nice to me. He was very kind. He was very experienced. He was a very giving person. He came off the bandstand. He went into the audience, dripping sweat. He was really a beautiful cat who knew the score. And he could be a little bit, he could take it out a little bit, no question about that. But to be with him was a great joy. I mean, very different than with Miles, who was much more serious and a little bit more difficult to know as a person. Elvin was out, and he liked us. He had 3 young, white, college-y type guys.
Yeah.
Grossman and Liebman sound like a law firm.
Grossman, Liebman, and Jones. Yeah.
And Jones. So, but we were thrilled to be with him, and he seemed to.
It's the oldest jazz program in the world, is the bandstand, man.
Apprenticeship.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to hear you say that about being behind the beat, because when you think of Coltrane, you think just crazy high energy.
Yes.
And here's Jones, trying to support it, but at the same time,
at a certain tempo, you couldn't lay back enough.
Cool, man. Very cool. Jeff, go ahead and pull up that quote. So we have people dropping lines from Facebook, and a reminder, you can certainly ask questions. I don't have to be the only one asking Dave questions, but this is from Andreas Schmidt. It's a nice message here. Lieb, in lovely health, state of mind, I wish for all these crazy times. Wonderful to have you in my living room now. All the best. Sir. Hi from Berlin. Yeah. You got fans all over the world, man.
Very nice piano player who's completely Letty Tristano, knows about Letty Tristano from left pinky to right pinky.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah, Lenny, I think it was Dot Time just released a previously unreleased Lenny Tristano thing. I'm talking about free jazz, one of the great unheralded heroes of free jazz, one of the first.
I studied with him. I took lessons for him. That's a whole story. But he was, he basically made his living from teaching. I mean, he played once in a while, but he was a little bitter, a little resentful of the scene, and maybe a little bit, he was put in the back. He was a genius, no question about it.
Right.
He was natural. He played every instrument. He was, and his lessons were 10 minutes long, if that. He knew what he was doing. But in those days, there was no one else to go to. There was no jazz school. There was no jazz teacher. You hung out with the guys like I described, or Lenny. Lenny taught a lot of people every instrument. It didn't, he taught drums. It was in a period when people still did not wish to or couldn't or wouldn't articulate about the music the way we are today, for example.
Right.
That just didn't, you didn't talk like that. That was no man's land, except, 1-to-1, you might have a shot.
Right.
To say, Charles, how do you play that high note?
Right. People were hardly even writing it down. There was no lesson. I'm thinking, I'm a trumpet player, so I'm thinking of guys like Carmine Caruso. There was no book on Carmine Caruso. You had to go to Carmine Caruso for your one-on-one lesson, and that was it. That's the way it was back then, man. Right. Okay, Dot Time recording plug.
Dot Time Records is my daughter. Is somehow she does PR, jazz PR. I think she's doing it. So plug Lydia Liebman with Dot Time Records for Lenny Tristano.
That's right. There you go. Happy to have it. Dave, man, let's go ahead and bring him up. The Prince of Darkness, Miles Davis himself, because at the time you're with Elvin, and Miles was kind of famous for this, kind of borrowing people from other bands.
He tried to borrow me the day of the On the Corner recording, or he appeared he did. He said, I played. There's a whole story about the recording, but at the end when we were getting ready to leave, he passed me on the I was between the studio and the booth and the engineer booth, and he said, I heard him say, "Join my band."
That was it.
And I turned around. It was so off the cuff that I would never have taken it seriously. And then again, I said to him, "I'm with Elvin. I can't do that." He said,
Wayne said the same thing. Wayne Shorter said the same thing.
He was with Blakey, and Blakey didn't.
Exactly.
Blakey got on Miles' case.
Yeah.
Blakey was the chief of the tribe. Miles
right.
Blakey, because Blakey's he's on the age. Was the older one. Him and Max, they were older.
The elder, yeah.
But so then 6 months later, he comes to the Vanguard. We're working in January of '73 with the band with Elvin and Steve and Gene Perola, and he comes down and he starts pulling my ear. And my girlfriend at the time, he says, "He's got to join my band. And, this is old music. He's going to play this. We're playing some new shit. Blah 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 blah." And that's a whole story. But anyway, he borrowed me from Elvin. But then this is one of the nice stories. After this all transpired on a Tuesday and a Wednesday night, he said to me Wednesday night, he says, "There'll be a car waiting for you tomorrow, and you're going to come up to my thing. We're going to talk about things and so forth." He said he had to back up. He said to me, "I want you to play, and I want you to, you got to talk to Elvin." I said to him, "You got to talk to Elvin."
Right. I
lived in Connecticut at the time. After the Vanguard, about 3 a.m, drove home. Drove the Vanguard, drove to Connecticut, and 4:30 in the morning, the phone rings, and it's Miles. He says, "I got you. You finish here in Boston next week." We were supposed to play jazz workshop with Paul Small or something like that. He said, "After next week, then you're mine." Shut down. He said, so then the next day I walk in. This is the hard point of the story. Thursday night, I walk in early. I was very excited, obviously.
Yeah.
I know I have to pick up equipment to match the volume. I know that much. I come in and Elvin is early, and he's at the bar. There's pretty much nobody in the club. He sees me. He says, "Lee, come over here." And he takes me and puts me in one of his very famous bear hugs. He was known for picking you up, around the stomach and the waist, and lifting you up because he was a bull. He was so strong. Yeah. And then he looked at me in his face, about two inches from my face. He says, "If Miles Davis wants you, you got to go."
Hey, man, the blessing.
That was it. Benediction. Yes.
All right, man. Beautiful, beautiful. And it was a fruitful partnership with Miles. I would love to talk about that recording session for On the Corner, which it comes with its own craziness. I understand you came from a doctor's appointment. You were rushed in.
At a doctor's. My mother found me. She said, "Tio Macero." She didn't say. She said, "Teo." Somebody. I said, "What? Wait a minute. Come to the studio now." I'm in Brooklyn. I know the studio's on Madison and 52nd. I hightailed it. Let me put it this way. I didn't get a ticket. I didn't get an accident. And I had my soprano with me.
Okay.
These are 3 fortuitous events that if one of them hadn't been there, I probably wouldn't be talking to you. Another one of those, this was a
right place. Right. Yeah.
Time, and you can't account for timing and luck. And this was right. The horn. What I have the horn for?
You have the horn. No traffic on the LIE.
Not for me. I get there, and I know Miles. He records in the morning. Because I was living with Grossman, who was with him already. Lenny White, Miles came home for dinner one day. I kind of by now, sort of knew him, and he. What was I saying? I'm sorry.
You're at the doctor's office. Mom calls.
My mom calls. So I tell it. I get there, and I know he records at 10 in the morning, and he doesn't record for 3 hours. Those days recording sessions were 3 hours. He does an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and that's it. So I'm really wondering if I missed it all because it's about 2.5 hours, 12:30. He sees me at the booth at the window and he makes a thing with his hands, play. I go inside. This is the 10 Commandments and Ben-Hur all at once. McLaughlin, Larry Young, Don Elias, Bottle Roy, Colin Walcott. I said Larry. I said another keyboard player, Herbie, Chick. Spread out over the studio. and silence. By the time I walk in, it's silence.
Yeah.
He's talking to Jack, and Miles is on the, there's a little couple of steps of the drum thing. He goes up, and he's singing something to Jack, like, something like the way he would articulate, as I learned, articulate beats. He would kind of sing a beat, something like that. You really didn't know what he meant, but you said you did,
Right.
They start playing, and then he makes a signal like this, and he takes my arm and he puts me into the mic. And the mic is one giant mic with a big boom. That's obviously Miles's mic. I remember seeing Sinatra Studio Capitol, same thing, one big mic, bigger mic like it was like this. So I take that first solo on the corner. I have no idea what key they're in. I can't hear anybody because it's all electric instruments except for the drums. And it's not like I'm about to stop and say, oh, by the way, are you in
so. Miles, hold on a sec. Yeah. Don't do that.
Of the 12 keys, let me try 11 of them. So I play, and that's that first track. And then, I'm the first thing you hear, for better or worse.
Right off the bat.
Then, of course, he, now after that, he starts this, then the Elvin, the Vanguard thing, and all leads to me being part of his band. But those people at that session, in fact, I wrote to that down on the corner has no liner notes. At least it didn't. And it didn't have personnel. It did not have personnel.
Right.
I wrote to Downbeat. This is about 2 months later when I was already in the band. I said, I just want to make things clear. There were human beings on this record. I wrote on this Downbeat.
Yeah.
Okay. Miles's thing was, if I put their names on, then people come to hear it and they already have a preconceived notion about it. Now I'm talking way longer than he would. But the point is, probably some secretary just left out the names. That's probably what happened. So.
Well, glad you fixed that, man, because like you mentioned, that was 7 Mount Rushmores of jazz in one room. I mean, everybody was on that record.
Yeah.
And there was some, controversy in its reception,
yes.
With the direction Miles was heading. Do you think it was a little ahead of its time or misunderstood?
Misunderstood. Much less, compared to Live Eva, which is great.
Yeah.
Miles in concert, which is very good. This was a whole other thing, rhythmically, especially. Mm-hmm. And Miles was tied to the wah-wah pedal by now, And this was definitely, that's the way he played in that time. Right. And I didn't hear him play one straight note in the year and a half with him. I don't know. I thought he didn't know what he was doing. My first 6 months with him, I just didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I played. I didn't have any scheme or anything. He would point to me when you wanted to play, and he kind of cut you off when he didn't want you to play. It was very basic. One night after 6 months, I was with him. I used to stay with him at night, and we ate a little, and we were hanging. And I don't know. I just was in that right state of mind, because he always listened to the tape of the night, and it was always on. I said, "I got it. I think I got it, Miles." He said, "I told you would." Because I did say to him, I don't know what you do. He said, just wait a while. He loved to talk music, very short. He didn't say much, but if you talked about music, you got some response from him. He was definitely on the case with the music. Other things could be out in the third world. But when it came to music, he was very serious about it. And to put it, what I think the music was it reflected, obviously, he loved Sly. And the way Sly broke up the beat, without getting too technical, the drum thing with Sly was very liquidy and very loose.
Yeah.
Which most rock and roll at that time was not.
Right, it had to be in the pocket. Yeah.
Exactly. And he was, in fact, that Thursday night when Elvin was the beginning of the night, at the end of the night, there was a car waiting for me and my lady at that time. And I came in and he was, upstairs. I didn't know the pad yet. I hadn't been to it. He said, put that on. And it was LP. And it was fresh, Sly. And there was a track called It's Time, or About Time, something like that. And he said, and he was in the bedroom, I was in the living room, 100 feet in between. Play it again, play it again, play it again. So I was there with the phonograph, and putting it on. He said, that's the way we're playing, that's the way we're playing. And it was this rhythm thing. I certainly wasn't singing. It was this rhythm thing that Sly was very influential on. I really think so. And James Brown to some degree. But I don't know where it's coming from.
More so Sly. That's all right.
Yeah, Sly, and in general, the wah-wah pedal, he didn't sound like a trumpet anymore. It was like an alien voice from another planet. So
which would become a technique utilized, by almost everyone.
Once you got used to it.
Yeah.
I could understand it, but it took me that 6 months to get something out that to make me cognize what it was that was going on there. It was really about the rhythm. In the end, it was about the rhythm.
Well, it obviously had a lasting impact on you because just recently you revisited the material.
Yes.
An entirely new band. That was an awesome album.
Yeah.
Was it On the Corner revisited or?
Yeah, I think that's yeah. And it wasn't just On the Corner, but that was the main premise of it,
Right.
Well, I had already done a couple Miles tributes over 30 years, 40 years. But this was Jeff Coffin, who plays with the.
Who will be on the Daily Brunch?
He'll be on, Please say hello.
That's right. Yeah.
And he invited me to Nashville and to do some workshops like I usually do. And he says, "Is there anything you want to do?" I said, "Well, I have played in Europe a few times on the corner, the music from On the Corner. And you got Victor and you got Chester Thompson. You got a pretty good cast here already, just to start with." He said, "Whatever you want to do, man, it's fine." So that was that one time we played it. Is that record?
Oh, that was it.
That's it. We played it once. I'm still waiting for him to book a gig or two, but we tell him when you see him. So still waiting for the downbeat.
Let's hope so. Soon enough, man. Soon enough. Let's hope so.
Yeah, it was. And it was a great night and a nice, like a kind of a rock kind of club, crossover kind of club, and it worked out very well. And I'm happy with the results, and I enjoyed Jeff's a nice cat. He plays really great.
Yeah, I mean, your recent stuff has been fantastic. All your stuff is fantastic, Dave. But I enjoyed that album a lot, and I'd love to talk about your newest, your latest. It is with the group Expansions.
This is it right here.
We got it right here.
Are we up there? Yeah.
It's called Earth.
Yes.
And there's a very interesting backstory, conceptually, to the making of this album, having to do with frequencies. Would you mind explaining the idea behind this album?
Well, I had started on a series in 1997 to display, dedicate, reveal about the four elements that surround us: air, fire, water, and which one am I missing? Fire, water, air, and
Earth.
Earth, thank you. Earth, obviously. And so in 97, I had a label that I was with called Arcadia. And I got Pat to do this record, Pat Metheny with Cecil McBee and Billy Hart, who I already been playing with. That was Water. And then in 2006 and 7, in Europe, an incredible genius engineer, Walter Quintus, who's passed on since then, with me making the sounds and him addressing the issue with computers. That time was rather new. Then in 2016, with Kenny Werner, Jack DeJohnette, and Dave Holland, that rhythm section I had recorded with in the 70s and so forth. We did Fire. And then finally, with my group, this present group of mine, I call it Expansions, we did Earth. And what it really is about is some kind of signifying about aspects of the elements that you have. So like for Earth, I have a volcano, avalanche, the Sahara, galaxy, things that have to do with the planet and the Earth and so forth. And, ecologicals, of course, let's treat the planet better. Obviously now everybody, that's the mantra now. But it was, a recording. This one I would put the emphasis on texture and color. Right. The keyboard player, Bobby Avey, was playing. He's got a keyboard, great little one. The other saxophone player, Matt Vashelishin, was playing Ewing, well, not Ewing, but a version of Ewing, synthesizer. And then the drums and Tony on bass, both basses, and me, the one acoustic instrument on soprano only. Okay. And it's about texture. It's about, musically, it's about intervals and so forth. So it's way, too technical for this. But the end result is about color. And I always talk, just a little teaching thing. I always say to students, there are 5 elements in music. There's harmony, at least in the Western world, harmony, rhythm, melody, form, and color. And color is texture and sound and ambiance and sonority and timbre. All those words mean the atmosphere that's created by those reflecting upon those parts of the planet. So we've gotten really great reception on the record, and there's a little bit of composition, but it's mostly pretty free and pretty textural.
It's a beautiful album. It is out now. Yes, and people can stream it. They can order it. Where's the best place for people to follow all things Dave Liebman? How should people stay in touch?
Well, my website, I put an itinerary on, at least until this period. The itinerary now would be a big zero.
Right.
But I usually, month to month, I would put what I'm doing and action like that. And sometimes I write some articles, but I have a lot on my website. I mean, my website is voluminous, and
especially those articles are fantastic, man. Yeah. Very insightful. You're a great writer. You're putting out some great content. So check it. Is it DaveLiebman.com? Is that what it is?
That either way, David or Dave Liebman.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And we certainly do hope people stay in touch, because if you thought his stories on this Jazz Brunch were great, go read his website. There's a ton of great stuff there. Dave, we're coming to the end of our brunch. I'm finishing my coffee. I'd love to hear you play something else on the way out, if that's cool. All right. Yeah, man. Beautiful. Talk about texture, you know? Mix it up a little. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. This was great.
You are well informed.
Very enjoyable brunch.
Yeah, thank you. And you are very good at this. And I'm pleasure.
Oh, no. Well, thank you. It's easy when you have a phenomenal guest like you. I want to remind people, you know, I don't have to be the only one asking questions. Feel free to chime in on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page. If you have a question for one of our guests, or you just want to drop a line like Jonathan Glass here, again, very appreciative of your knowledge and your insight. Please do. A little later in the week, Dave friends are going to be stopping by. We've got Randy Brecker coming on the show a little later this week. Tomorrow, I believe. Jeff Coffin will be here next week. So stay tuned every day at 11, folks. We're having a good time here.
Good idea, man.
Dave, again, thank you so much. Follow Dave along, DaveLiebman.com. His new album is Earth. Check it out. Pick up a copy for yourself. It is really, really good. Dave, thank you so much for doing this again. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Yep.
Appreciate it. You too.
Bye.